exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I've pressed record. So on that note, Garry, it's an absolute genuine privilege, and I'm hugely excited to have you on this episode of Leadership Bites. Welcome.
Hey, g'day, guy. It's really good to be here with you this morning. Thank you. Or afternoon, probably where you are.
Exactly. So, the sun is risen at your end and the windows are shut at mine. So for the audio podcast, I've done a little introduction for who you are, but for the video version, not so much. So it'd be great just to get a sense of, Garry, who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of move on from there.
Certainly. Yeah, I'm Garry Ridge. I'm the consciously incompetent, probably wrong and roughly right chairman and CEO of WD-40 company, that little blue and yellow can with the red top that people probably have in their garage or under their kitchen sink.
It's the stuff that fixes everything. That's what it's the magic can, as I kind of reference to it.
Thank you.
So, well, my little boy will go, "Is it time for the WD-40, Dad?" And I go, "It may very well be, son." So that's
fantastic.
So on that note, Garry, we're going to get in. I mean, I approached you and you were very gracious to come on the podcast, which is fabulous. And I do want to get into the way that you think and focus and how you reference the world for leadership. But just before that, I'm this firm believer in understanding the individual to then make even more sense or value from what it is that they say. So that little journey of how you got to be where you are from whatever that journey was, it'd be great just to get a sense of that and some of the stepping stones.
Sure.
So over to you, sir.
Sure. So, as some people will tell by my accent, I'm an Aussie. I was born in Sydney, Australia. Leaving school, I went to work for a retailing organization. I was a management trainee there. I did a course in what was then called modern retailing, which wouldn't be really that modern today. And after graduating that program, I was offered a job to go and work for a wholesaler that as a sales rep. And so at a young age, they offered me a company car, and I thought, this is a pretty good ride. So I took that job.
That's my criteria.
And having that role, I got to know the people at a company called Hawker Pacific in Australia, which was actually part of the Hawker Siddeley Group, a UK-based organization. And Hawker Pacific were the Australian licensees for WD-40 and for another product called Armour All. And because of that relationship, I got to know the people at WD-40 in the United States. I was general manager in the end of the consumer products division at Hawker Pacific. So I'd travel over to the States regularly and attend sales meetings and whatever. So I got to know the people at WD-40. And in 1987, the licensing agreement with Hawker was coming to an end. And that was at a time when the WD-40 people were getting really serious about growing their business outside of the United States. Although the product was outside of the United States, at that time, 90% of the revenue was in the United States. And there was really no one in the organization that had a passion to really be the global globetrotter, if you will. Anyhow, I got a phone call one day from the then chief at WD-40, and the conversation kind of went a bit like this. "Hi, Garry, this is a confidential conversation. As you know, we want to open a subsidiary in Australia. Would you like to come and do that for us?" And I said, "Oh, that sounds like a good idea." My dad was an engineer, and I remember calling him and saying, "Guess what, Dad? I've been offered a job to work for WD-40. And he gave me a great piece of advice. He says, "You can't go wrong with that stuff, son." So I joined the company, and I opened the Australian subsidiary with a fax machine under my bed. And 6 months later, we're up and going. We employed people, and I basically worked out of Australia from 87 to 94, but did a lot of work up in Asia. And in 94, I was having a conversation with my now boss, the chief at WD-40. And I said, "Is there anything else you'd like me to do? I can do a bit more work if you like." And he said, "Well, funny you should ask. Do you want to move to the United States?" And I said, "To do what?" He said, "Well, you have a passion for international business, and we'd like you to come here and head up our global expansion program." I said, "Wow, that sounds like a reasonable idea." So we packed up our toys and we moved to San Diego. And then 3 years later, he retired. And for some reason, the board of directors were a public company. The board of directors thought it was a wise idea to give this, one-time traveling salesman from Australia this job as CEO. So I got to lead the company. And that's the experience has been wonderful. One of the big moments in my life back then is I went back to school. Soon after becoming the CEO, I went to the University of San Diego and I did a master's degree in leadership. And that's where I met my dear friend and my co-author, Ken Blanchard, the 1 Minute Manager. And Ken has been my mentor, and I was subsequently on his board of his company for 10 years, and he's 81 years old now. I see him regularly, but I learned the power of servant leadership, and I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to practice it. And so that was the start. And since then, we've grown the company to, the market cap back then was 300 million. We're now at 3.5 billion. So we've 10x the size of the company. 65% of our business now is outside of the United States. And we have an amazing culture. We have a 93% employee engagement, which is, at least 60 points better than most companies, and probably a lot more than that. So that's why I say I'm consciously incompetent. It's not about me. I'm not the one. It's about all these wonderful people that come to work and have fun at WD-40 every day.
Boom. That's quite a lot in there, actually. So thank you for that.
Sure.
There's a couple of things that I pick up on in there. You've used that phrase "for some reason," and as in for some reason they chose me. And you've spoken about servant leadership, and talking about servant leadership is very easy. Well, per se, the intellectualization of it's not too tricky, but the reality of applying what it means and living in that way is a different element to me. So I don't want you, this isn't me asking you to sing your own praises, but I would like to dive into that reality of what enables you to operate at the level that you do. Let me phrase it like that. What is it that gives you your strength, and how you stay sharp? Because I often say that staying still in fast moving water is quite tricky. So how do you, tip of the spear kind of thing, how do you not be dulled? How do you keep that edge, might be the wrong word, but that learning ahead of the change that's going on around you? So it'd be lovely to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. There's a few things around that I'd love to share. Number one is many years ago, I learned the three most powerful words in my life. And those three most powerful words are I don't know. And I got really comfortable with those three words. And the other thing that I really believe in, and I was traveling early in my career when I got here before I became CEO, I was flying from Los Angeles to Sydney, in fact. And I was reading some of the work of the Dalai Lama. And I'm not necessarily a religious person. I'm probably a little spiritual. But the Dalai Lama said, our purpose in life is to make people happy. If we can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them. And why that stuck with me is I saw so many people being hurt by going to work because they were being led in a toxic environment where they didn't feel valued. And that linked up very much later on with me when I was studying servant leadership. I saw too many people have their empathy being eaten by their ego instead of their ego being eaten by their empathy. And then I also read another book, and actually Ken Blanchard recommended it to me, and it was by Robert Fulghum, and it's Everything You Need to Know You Learn in Kindergarten. And it gives you some very simple, things. Say please and thank you, pick up after yourself. If you go out at night, go with a friend, clean up your mess. Sort of the stuff I learned from Mrs. Bennett, my kindergarten teacher, and things that my mother and father always said you needed to respect. And I thought, wow, if we treat people right, if there's a clear purpose, if there's a clear set of values in the organization, if you balance being tough-minded and tender-hearted, if you care about people, if you're candid with people, if you hold each other accountable, and you take on the pledge of responsibility, certain great things should happen. And over the years, we've proven that purpose-driven, passionate people guided by values create amazing outcomes, because that's what's happened at WD-40 Company. The other thing that I think is really sad is how we embed fear in organizations because of the fear of failure. So I took the word failure out of the vocabulary and I said, we don't make mistakes. We have learning moments. And what's a learning moment? A learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that needs to be openly and freely shared to benefit all people. And it also then creates an environment where learning is really treasured. So we're a learning organization. I love the way we get curious, and we do that every day. So, I often say, imagine a place where you go to work every day. You make a contribution to something bigger than yourself. You learn something new. You feel safe and are set free by a compelling set of values, and you go home happy. Happy people create happy families. Happy families create happy communities. Happy communities create a happy world. And by goodness, we need a happy world. So I think our role as leaders is to create a place where people leave with a smile, because a lot of them come to work with a smile, but most people don't leave with a smile. So our job is to help people leave with a smile.
I already have the sense that I could spend the next 2 or 3 days with you, so I'm going to try and make my questions a little bit more pointed. But one of the things I talk about is, instead of corporate social responsibility, could we just say social responsibility? Because there's a belief with me that if there's 100 people in this team and we go home and 5 people, that's X amount, and you can do the domino effect, which is by us taking responsibility, as you say, for people going home happy, then that has an impact on the community. And if we all did it, a better world. So I really buy into that. I think that's incredibly powerful. I think what I'm interested in hearing you talk is I've noticed that sometimes good people end up doing things that they, on reflection or in a quiet moment, they know they're pushing too hard or taking people to a place maybe where it's hard work for them, because they have these commercial pressures. They do believe in team. They do believe in the things that we've said, but because they fear failure, and particularly maybe when the market means it's harder for them to go and get another job somewhere else, they start to become quite submissive to power because they fear falling into the bad books and maybe being let go, etc. And I just wonder how you manage, because I can hear what you've said, but how do you actually manage the managers maybe that are driving too hard? And where's that balance between highly motivated and completely driven and it's gone into the red or it's gone into the amber? And I wonder how you pick up on that or know that, because it's almost good people doing good things, but it's an overdone strength. It's gone too far. So lovely to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. I think that in our organization, it's really driven by our second value. And our second value in the company is we value creating positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships. So, if I see someone or there's someone in the organization that is acting in a way where they're not creating those positive, lasting memories, there's a great way to have a conversation around that. Now, let me give you an example of how that happened, a real life example. So we're in a meeting and there's someone in the meeting, it's early in the morning, and they're not creating positive, lasting memories. They're spitting out toxic, if you will, and you can see this toxic cloud kind of sucking the energy out of the room, and, people are uncomfortable and whatever. Well, this happened one day, and at the end of the meeting, I went to the person, I said, "Hey, Guy, let's go for a walk." So Guy and I went out to the parking lot and we're walking around, and I'm looking in a trash can and looking behind a tree, and Guy says, "What are you doing, Garry?" I said, "Guy, I'm looking for you. The guy I know and love was not in that room today. What's on your mind? What's happened to you today?" And we had a conversation, and he'd had a bad morning. He got up late, spilled his coffee, kicked his toe on the table. Someone cut him off on the way to work. And that allowed us to have that conversation around the fact, well, you didn't create any positive, lasting memories in that room today. You actually spat out toxic fumes, if you will. The meeting went south very quickly. If that happens to you again, don't come to work. Go to the beach. Get it out of your system, because your responsibility as a leader is not to come and pollute the environment. It's your responsibility is to come and enhance the environment. And he said, yeah, thank you for the feedback. We hugged. That was before COVID. And he went inside, and he actually went to the people that were in the meeting, and he said, hey, sorry, Guy wasn't Guy this morning. Sure. This is what happened. And they said, well, thank you. Interestingly enough, Guy, the next day, what did I observe? People going to that person and just checking in on them to see how they were. So how do you, again, it's showing tough love, but with empathy. Because, people who push people too hard, you won't get the best out of it. It's a bit like what I call hull speed. I don't know, if you're sailing a boat and you've got the boat trimmed as best you can, and the wind's in the sail, and you're going at maximum speed. If you put more wind in that sail, the boat won't go any faster. It'll just blow out the sail. So, what we want to look for is hull speed.
That's interesting. It's almost, yes, in the martial arts, I teach martial arts. So if it takes, hypothetically, X pounds per pressure to break something, then what does more do? So I definitely hear that, and that resonates with me. So I'm going to ask you a question that is from a place of I buy into this. So I'm not, I really connect with this, and I have a curiosity around the environments that I sometimes observe, and I have no other word for it, and you may have a more grown-up word for it, which is what I call the happy clappy club. And the happy clappy club is when you have to show that you're on the bus, and you have to show that you're fundamentally positive and everything's a challenge rather than a problem. And the intellectualization of that is coming from a good place, but somehow it's distorted into not being able to be anything other than genuine, if that makes sense. And it's now morphed into something quite negative. And I wonder, it's almost like in the UK, we sometimes say, the Queen must think the world smells of paint because somebody's 3 meters in front of her painting things for her. So is there a safeguard, or how do you measure that, the king being told what he wants to hear and you knowing if that's real, and going all the way down? 93% employee engagement would be a key indicator, but what measures do you have, and how do you keep tabs on that?
Sure. I think there's a couple of questions to unpack there. The first one, how do we measure this? Back in 1999 or 2000, we started doing employee opinion surveys. And the reason I started is I wanted to feel the pulse of the organization. And back then, our employee engagement number was probably in the 50s. So we saw opportunity, and we've done them regularly ever since. And our last one was this March. We now do it in 7 languages. 96% of our people globally participate freely. Freely. It's totally anonymous. And the reason they participate is they know we do something with the results. We actually share the results back with the people and say, this is what you told us, so help us fix whatever we need to fix. Now, in that survey, not only do we have 93% employee engagement, let me give you 2 or 3 other numbers that are really, really important. 98% of our people globally say, I love to tell people I work at WD-40 company. And 97% of the people say, I respect my coach. Now, their coach is their boss, because we don't have managers in the organization. You have a coach. So the people who report to me, I am their coach. And why do we call ourselves a coach? Because our motto is, we're not here to mark your paper, we're here to help you get an A. So our job as a coach is to help people succeed. So if the happy clappy club is a false place, then it's going to be false. But if being satisfied in an organization because you go to work, you've got a true purpose or a just cause. Our just cause is to make life better at work and at home. That's our just cause. And if you're achieving something that you're proud of and you're being treated with respect and dignity, you'll be happy most of the time. You won't be happy all the time.
we have times when things are not going the way we want to do, but that doesn't stop us from treating people with respect and dignity. Now, if someone's not happy at WD-40 Company, they should go somewhere else and get happy, because in life, you need to be happy. And, we're a great place, but we're not for everybody. So I've had conversations with people around the fact that, look, I can see that you're not getting what you want out of this. You're not happy. Please be happy. Go somewhere else and be happy. How can we help you be happy somewhere else? So again, but culture equals values plus behavior times consistency. So in an organization, to build a great culture, you've got to have a clear set of values. Behavior means you as a leader have to love your people enough and care about them enough to not only praise them and recognize when they're doing good, but to redirect behavior that isn't good. And you have to do it consistently, day after day after day after day. And that's the formula we've used to create this wonderful culture that we have.
That's really, really powerful. For you, Garry, how do you stay sharp? How do you stay alert? Because often when I work with senior teams, I'll often say, what's your relationship with learning? Oh yeah, we love learning. And I'll go, great. What have you done that's you've not been told to do by your company for your own development? And normally there's a lot of quietness at that point where somebody might possibly listen to a podcast. So,
well,
as long as it's mine, that's fantastic. But
well, the most learning I get is out of teaching, and I'm a professor at the University of San Diego. I teach a class there on putting culture into practice. I teach at University of Pennsylvania in their leadership doctoral program. I teach at the San Diego State University, where I'm a guest lecturer there. So I've been teaching at USD for 10 years. And then I'm involved with some really, really creative and very smart people. Marshall Goldsmith is a dear friend of mine, and he has a group called the Marshall Goldsmith 100. There I get to mix with people like Chester Elton, who wrote the Leading with Gratitude, Whitney Johnson, the list goes on. Alan Mulally, who was the CEO of Ford, and we have opportunities together there. Simon Sinek's a friend of mine, who he wrote The Infinite Game. In fact, I just taught my class this last weekend virtually, and I had Simon Sinek come in on Friday. I had Marshall Goldsmith come in on Saturday, and Chester Elton come in on Sunday as guest speakers. So they were great. So, and then just being curious. When I was growing up at home in Australia, there was a guy that was on the TV. I remember coming home from school and watching him. His name was Professor Julius Sumner Miller. And he used to do these scientific experiments on TV, a learning show. And he'd do crazy things like suck a hard-boiled egg into a milk bottle or something like that. But he always finished everything with this, I'll never forget it. And why is it so? And I've never forgotten that statement of always saying, why is it so? Or I ask myself a lot, why do I believe this true? There was a great book written by Spencer Johnson called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yes.
You might remember that. There was a follow-on that was written by his kids just after he passed away called Out of the Maze.
I didn't know.
And it was talking about how Hem and Harv eventually found their way out of this maze. And the last piece of the book's about why do we believe what we believe? And I think that curiosity is really important. So, I'm always asking myself, why do I believe that? Not that I'm, doubting Thomas, but it's, well, why is that like that? And I'm just curious.
Is it still true? Is another nice one that I quite like, which is,
it still true?
Always thought it to be true, but is it still true? That fixed mind is quite. You're careful with that, I guess.
And Brené Brown, who has written a number of great books, she has a thing where she talks about, in the absence of facts and knowledge, we make up stories. And often, we ask ourselves, what story are we telling ourselves right now?
And that's really a pretty dangerous thing, because we'll make up a story because we don't have all the information, and then that story becomes our truth, and it's far from the truth.
Yeah, I've very often talked to leaders about the idea of, it's not so much that you're fireside storytellers, but you are, if there are things in the business that we would agree that culture is very often what people are talking about, then that role is to offer new truths as long as they're genuine and they exist. And if they're not around, then we have to make them. So if we can't put something in that space, then we need to go and create it so we can. And that, so in that, I like that, in the absence of facts and knowledge, and if we haven't got anything to offer, then we need to go and create something that will fulfill that.
Right. Yeah, it's sad. And again, I think so many leaders, I for those who are watching, here's someone I'll introduce you to. This is Al. Al is the soul-sucking CEO, or the
Garry's
soul-sucking.
just held up I don't know, I'd say a 6-inch mannequin with a type A written on his chest, and I think is he sucking is that the heart? Oh, that's just his mouth open. I see. Right.
Mouth, because he never knows when to shut up.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And what does that? What does that represent?
Yeah. Well, Al's the soul-sucking CEO or the soul-sucking leader, and he has some attributes that are really not, that really don't build leadership. He always must be right. He's corporate royalty. He never listens to anybody else. He doesn't keep his word. He hates feedback. All of the things that that he's fought his way to the top of this organization. He probably has the biggest office in the building. He has his own personal car space, maybe even a toilet in his office, and people are expected to bow down to Al. Well, Al is not there to be served. He is there to serve. So the servant leader is there to serve the people. How may we serve you to help you get an A? Because our job as a leader is to help people get A's. That's why we call ourselves coaches. And where is a great coach? If you've never seen the coach of the All Blacks or the Wallabies or whoever on the football field, where are they? They're on the sideline and in the locker room. They're watching the game and you're critiquing the play through the players. And never, ever do you see them on the great coaches on the podium picking up the cup. No. You see the team there, picking up the cup. Yeah. But that's not Al. He when things go wrong, it's someone else's fault. When things go right, Al takes all the glory. So he's the soul-sucking leader, and there's plenty of Als out there.
I like this. It makes me think of this phrase, which is not to be in service, which some people, when they hear servant leadership, they go, like a servant, but to be of service.
Of service.
Yeah, and that's the phrase that works for when I say it's not about being in service, it's not about submission, it's not about being beneath, it's about being equal to and allowing people to be equal to you and being of service to them.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Garry, in your journey in this organization, are there any key moments that you look back on and go, look, I'm sure I'd have got here one way or the other, but those are some of those moments when I spoke to that person or I read that particular book or whatever it was that you go, I can really attribute some of my aha moments to maybe some conversation or a moment in time. And I wonder if you could share one or two of those that would add value to that journey.
Yeah, I mean, there's many people. I'm so grateful to those that have given their time to help me understand how I could be a better me. Am I being the me I want to be right now is a great question to ask ourselves. But, I've had, Ken Blanchard, who's been my mentor. One moment that I really loved, when I first got to the United States, I was sitting in a meeting and there was someone from outside the company presenting something to us, and I'm sitting there and
I have no idea what this person's talking about. They're camouflaging this issue with confusion to make out how smart they are. And, this person was really on the podium wanting to show how clever they were by really showing how stupid we probably were. So about 15 minutes into this thing, I put up my hand and I say, excuse me, not long in this country. I'm an Aussie. I have no clue what you're talking about. And guess what happened? Everyone in the room went, because none of us knew what he was talking about. And it was really, a moment about, be brave enough to be able to admit that you don't know. And that was a great example. And that's where those 3 words came, I don't know, or my saying, as I often say, I'm consciously incompetent and probably wrong and roughly right in most circumstances. So perfection is not my game.
I also noticed there's something about being willing to put yourself in harm's way, for the want of a better phrase, which is, if it's about popularity, when you're of a rank or a level, you might say, well, I don't need to care about that anymore, which would be wrong, but somebody might take that position. But on the way up, for a lot of people, it's what I call it this, just to strike a point, which is the Cocker Spaniel years, which is, your boss throws the stick, you go and get it, return it as quickly as you can and wait for the next stick to be thrown. And to not be like that, and to put your hand up and go, that doesn't sound right, or I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm interested in where that part of you comes from, because a lot of people might be sitting there going, I don't know what this person's talking about. But the willing to put yourself in harm's way and maybe reap repercussions for, why did you interrupt, or, whatever. Where does that come from inside of you? Do you know?
My mom always said that, it's okay to ask. She even said, Garry, even the Queen goes to the bathroom, so it's okay to ask. But I think it's just, I had nothing to lose. I mean, I'm not much of a kiss up. I am what I am. What you see is what you get, and I try to live to my meaning, and my meaning in life is results of what I am doing matters to me and helps others. Why am I on your show today, in your podcast? Because I believe it matters to get the message out about leadership, and maybe someone listening to this will pick up a couple of pointers from all of my scar tissue and learning that I've had over time, and touch someone's life in a positive way. It's really cool when you get little notes and letters, but about a month or 2 ago, I got a letter, and it started off with, you won't remember me, however, which is a great letter. And it was a guy that had heard me speak at a conference well over a year ago, because we flew there. And I was talking about, happiness at work. And if you're not at a place where you go home happy, you should be brave enough to do something about that. And he listened, and he wrote me the letter. He said, I heard what you said. I couldn't get it out of my mind. I actually left my job. I found a new place. And I'm so happy. It probably saved my life and my marriage. Thank you for sharing that. And to me, it was like, wow, does life get any better than that? And he said, funnily enough, he was driving home from the hardware store the other day. He'd been and picked up a can of WD-40 to work on his bicycle, because now with COVID, he was going to ride again.
Right.
And he was repairing. He said to his daughter in the car, do you know what we've just bought? And she said, oh, some sort of oil stuff, I guess, Dad. Anyhow, later on, he was fixing the bike, and his daughter was there helping him, and he sprayed the WD-40. He said, can you smell that? And she said, yeah. He said, you'll remember this moment for life, because we're doing something together. And that also touched me too, because our why statement for our company is, we exist to create positive, lasting memories, solving problems in factories, homes, and workshops around the world. And I can remember when I was a young boy or a young man, I had a Mini 850 with an east-west motor. The distributor was in the front, so every time you went through water, the car would break down. And I can still remember my dad telling me to use WD-40. I can remember the moment. So we create these memories with people because of what we do. So if someone asks us what business we're in the memories business. That's the business we're in. So it really plays into who we are as a culture. We create positive, lasting memories.
I love that. And I think that's something which the product may be relatively benign in the sense of what it is, but actually if you attach the memory or the story that goes around the product, then it becomes something quite powerful, as long as that's genuine and not just a Machiavellian approach to marketing.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, we sell oil in a can, right?
Yeah.
No, we don't. We sell memories.
Yeah.
We create positive moments of memories. We help people at work, we help them at home, and that goes back to our just cause to make life better at work and at home.
So I'm just alert to time, and as I said, I could keep you for a considerable length of it. So the one question I probably want to make my last one is, when I started these podcasts and COVID was coming in, I thought I won't talk about COVID very much because it won't be here for very long. And, hey, and then Bob's your uncle. Here we are. So I just wondered if I can understand that the inherent truths of everything that you've spoken about still exists because it's inherently true. But I just wonder about managing people who maybe are at home and their personal stresses. I just wonder if has anything changed? Has it meant you've had to calibrate any of that thinking, or has it just become extra important? Or I just wonder what this has done for your lens.
Well, firstly, I am so grateful for the culture we have at the company, because we've been drawing down on what I call cultural equity right through the last nearly year.
Right.
You know, we've all been virtual since March. We're all working from our homes wherever we are in, 17 or 18 countries around the world. The sun never sets on WD-40. Someone's awake somewhere with it in around the world. But, what's become clear to us is even we will never be a virtual company, but we will be a better company because now we're better at being virtual. Okay. And what it's meant for us is we've had to turn up the volume on communication. I send out an inspirational message to every tribe member. We call ourselves a tribe, not a team. Every tribe member every morning at around 4:30 in the morning, San Diego time. We're consistently having, virtual events to stay connected. Wonderful story from our French team. We have, 30 or 40 people in France, and, the French love their food. They haven't been together. So they had their end of year meeting just last week. We sent out ingredients to make a dish to every French tribe member. They all got on virtual in their kitchens and started cooking their dishes together. And then at the end of it, they judged who had the best presentation of that. So, there's a wonderful way of doing that. We had for our company's 67th birthday, which was in September, we got a comedian he was actually from the UK, and he was a magician from the UK. And he did a virtual magic show for us for around the world. So here we all were at our homes. It was breakfast time in Sydney. It was earlier morning in China. It was sort of lunchtime in San Diego. It was afternoon in New York, and it was into the evening in the UK and France and Spain and Germany and Italy. And they were drinking wine over there and having breakfast in the Southern Hemisphere. And here we all are together, and we had, the Brady Bunch screen was full of all of our people talking to each other across being virtual. So it's taught us a lot, but it's really been something that's made it so special that we want to be together again. So, yeah. And I sent out also video messages. I recorded 2 this morning, one for our office in Kuala Lumpur and one for our office in Italy. So we're always trying to stay in touch.
Wow. Well, listen, Garry, I'm going to bring us to a close, not because I want to, but because I think I run the risk of just going on and on and on. But just on a personal note, I've been in this space for, I'm 50, so a good 20 odd years learning my craft and trade. And, just I hear people talk sometimes, and I know it's the right thing to say, and I know it's an intellectualization for them, etc. But I also sometimes know their business and know it's not like that. So what you've said, first of all, makes sense. But I think one of the genuine impacts that I'm experiencing is the fact that you believe it and you have the proof in the pudding, which I think also makes it much more powerful in what you say. So just from me, and I'm sure from other listeners and observers of the video, thank you so much for giving me this time. It's been hugely appreciated.
You're very welcome, Guy. And you're not 50. You're celebrating the 29th anniversary of your 21st birthday.
Boom. I see what you did there. So I'm going to press stop and then we'll talk for a few seconds afterwards. But thank you so much, Garry.
You're welcome.